Hello, welcome to this episode of our program World Today, where we are having an in-depth look at the local and international press headlines. Let me welcome our guest, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political and economic analyst, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Again.
Thank you.
We start from Mahram Online, and I don't know, I guess it's a positive note, and Kenya exempts entry visas for Egyptians, according to the Kenyan Vice President. And it says that Kenya has exempted pre-obtained entry visa to Egyptians looking to visit the country. The Vice President of Kenya, William Ruto, announced during a visit to Cairo.
Yes.
So I guess what we have to ask here is, if Kenya started with such an issue, I guess it should be reversed, or vice versa, the situation.
Not necessarily, but it means that Kenya appreciates Egypt and welcome the Egyptians to come to go to Kenya, and maybe it will encourage Egyptian investments in Kenya. It will increase the bilateral trade between the two countries. But in essence, it's a diplomatic gesture, nice, courteous, and of course we do appreciate. Whether we reciprocate, it's a matter of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I think we can do that.
Definitely. That takes me to the other question. That means that Egypt has already been able to really retrieve its African position.
Sure. We have been ignoring Africa for a long, long time, and I think as soon as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took office, he concentrated on getting back to Africa and enhancing the relations with all the African countries, particularly the countries of the Nile Basin. So Kenya being one of them, our relations with Kenya and others have become as it should have been all the time. So now we're back in Africa. We are assuming our leader position, as we always did, and this is a very good move, because at the end of the day, Africa for us is depth, strategic depth,
yes,
and it's a very good market for our products.
Very much indeed. It is certainly what exactly you said, sir. Moving on to the Daily Star, in Egypt says appreciates Washington's support for government's economic reform plan. And Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry expressed Cairo's appreciation for Washington's support for his country's economic reform program. According to the Foreign Ministry, which has issued this in statement on Thursday during a telephone conversation with Secretary of State John Kerry, Shoukry expressed Cairo's appreciation of U.S. support of Egypt's economic reform plan, which was presented to the International Monetary Fund Board, and U.S. support to several aspects of the Egyptian economy recently. How do you read this piece of news?
Again, it's a nice courteous call. You know, I'll tell you.
Actually, it's not out of only courtesy.
I'll tell you. United States are the biggest shareholders in the IMF.
Yes.
So it was not conceivable that IMF would take a decision without the consent of the United States. So, I mean, they have already agreed to it, and agreeing meaning that they see that the steps we've taken are adequate and are good and on the right track. So this was maybe from our excellent Minister of Foreign Affairs, just a thank you call, and I mean, to ease up the escalating tension between the two countries. So it is a nice gesture, and I hope that it is the beginning of, let's say, slightly better understanding between the two.
Why slightly, and why we do not raise our hopes for
another
start for?
Of course we will, but point is, the elections have already come and gone, and now they have a new president. So the few weeks the old administration is staying is simply, I mean, we don't expect any administration to take crucial decisions during the few left weeks, but I'm sure that with the new administration we are aspiring to much better relations, I'm sure.
Right. Moving on to the daily news. In Cairo, ready to host National Palestinian Dialogue. Egypt intelligence chief to Islamic Jihad delegation. And it says Cairo ready to host and sponsor a national dialogue between different Palestinian political forces. Egypt General Intelligence Chief told a Palestinian Islamic Jihad delegation on Wednesday during a Cairo meeting. Egypt's General Intelligence Chief Khalid Fawzi received in Cairo meeting the leading Palestinian Islamist organization Secretary General Ramadan Shallah. Egypt has been carrying on with or has been taking the Palestinian cause as one of its priority. Simply ever since the whole start of the Palestinian cause as a Palestinian cause after the Israeli occupation and all that. How do you view Egypt's ability to really be able to gather the Palestinian factions, particularly at this particular moment when they are really facing very dangerous situation for many reasons? And we have seen just a few days ago a law preventing mosques from even holding the prayers in loud voices and another one for settlements activities in the West Bank and all. I mean here in face of the Israeli measures, the very stagnant, provocative ones that it has been taking up till this minute.
You know, Egypt has been responsible, I should say, or carrying the burden of the Palestinian problem for the past 68 years now, since 1948.
Yes.
And but I mean, forget we have hosted hundreds of meetings and we have mediated tens of times. But I think that the timing now is good because of, in my opinion, two things. First of is that I have a feeling our relation with Israel on the political level is okay, is good, is better than previous times. And this will maybe can give us a good leverage to talk to them and to convince them and have them accept a few things they maybe were not willing to accept previously. That with the Israeli part. And on the other side, with the Palestinians, it's about time to talk some sense into their heads and make them understand once and for all that without our interference, particularly as Egypt, they will not go far with Israel. And on the other side, if they don't put their heads together and stop being divided, once again, they will stay in this dilemma, God knows for how long. So it is a good timing, and I think Egypt has always been the major player on the Israeli issue, and I'm sure we will continue to be.
Definitely will continue to be. However, we have to put some question marks on Israel itself. And okay, we do remember that Israel has welcomed President Sisi's extending hands and saying that he is really ready to contribute to what can be a return in negotiations. But ever since they have carried on and on and on with provocative measures, and that is in itself a big question mark.
Well, this is the game of power, Mona. This is the game of power. I mean, Israelis are known to be top negotiators and excellent negotiators, and they like to stand all the time in a better negotiating position. And what they are doing, whether arrogant, whether illegal, whatever you may call it, it's one way to sort of better their position as on the negotiating table. And it's actually the Palestinians' mistake to wait and stall and not to put their heads together, giving Israel time to again change the status quo to its own benefit and sit on the negotiating table with more and more and more pluses and advantages. So it's about time that we carry on without delay.
Right, we'll move on to the Gulf today, and another regional country, Syria and Aleppo airstrikes kill several more. And it says Syrian government and Russian warplanes pounded rebel-held parts of northern Syria, including battered second city Aleppo, where food aid Russians were on but exhausted after months of regime siege. Of course, this is how the Gulf view the situation in Syria, but the situation in Syria now is a little bit, it has been very much into limbo. We don't know what's going on there. But particularly those days when Mr. Trump was elected, and he said it in clear statements that he would like to start retreating from the domestic affairs of others, and that the Middle East has been seeing chaos because of their interference. And even calling Mr. Putin and discussing how they can enhance their relations. How do you view a change in course into the situation in Syria in this upcoming stage?
You hit the right point, my dear. Yes. First of all, we have to accept the fact that Russia, regardless or not they have interests in Syria, but they were asked officially by the Syrian government to intervene and to interfere and to help fight the rebels. So their presence is somewhat official and legal. And the telephone call between President Putin and President-elect Trump, apparently they talked about the subject, and as I understood from between the lines that President-elect Trump, not that he gave President Putin a green light to continue, but as you rightly said, he said that he wants to pull back a little bit from the chaos going on there. So this gave Putin more sort of free hand to help the Syrian government take care of the rebels. And unfortunately, there is always collateral damage, and people always exactly.
Except for that, we really need to understand here how would the U.S.-Russian relations shape up, because we have heard Mr. Putin saying clearly, for the very first time, a Russian president tells a president-elect, a U.S. president-elect, that we know that it's a hard task, we know that there are many difficulties, but for the first time in the history of the U.S. and Russia, that the Russian say that they are willing very much indeed to extend their hands and start negotiating a better relations, a better dialogue that could lead to both the interests of both sides. Are we seeing here a kind of peaceful talks that would really put down a little bit this Cold War? I don't know if it became cold or it has turned into hot, particularly in the Middle East, but are we seeing a kind of change in this aspect?
I see it. Remember when we were talking about the elections and we said that I was not surprised that Trump won. Actually, I was seeing it coming. But in my, again, humble opinion, I feel Mr. Trump is a peace man. And yes, I hope we wait and see. But yes, I have this, and based on, but this is not the time to discuss my assessment is based on what, anyway, so he is much better anyway. So you don't get angry. He will be much better from this standpoint than the older administration. And he said it repeatedly that he wants to open a new page with Russia, with China, and he wants to extend his hands to reach reasonable settlements on all the issues that are really boiling, particularly in our area. So I think he will eventually come to that.
So I have just 1 minute left for me, and I have The Guardian with a headline, a real headline: Russia withdraws signature from the International Criminal Court statute.
Of course, expected. The Attorney General, I think, of the Criminal Court had in mind to sort of press charges against Russia for what they did in the Crimean region, and they thought this was an aggression, and this was an act of war, and this were war crimes. So the only thing to do is to withdraw from this whole institution so that they can't press charges against Russia.
But that would be the first time for this court to take a decision against a Western country. We've always seen it taking defiance of the African leaders.
Oh, yes. That's why 3-4 different African countries just went out a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, but that would be certainly the first time for this court to take an action against.
Let's say against
a big power.
Exactly, a country of this magnitude, of course. And that's exactly, very intelligent Mr. Putin is, by the way.
I have to say that incidents around the world are very hot, and they really need for us to take notice all the time. I guess our time is out. I have to end it here.
No problem.
Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political and economic answer. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the top stories coming right after this program.